Hello. Just sitting here smoking a cigar on Thanksgiving Day outside in the beautiful countryside here. And for those of you that don't know, there is a road to freedom in these times that we live in. I've come to call it the IVIUM, but it starts with the classical liberal arts. Liberal being the operative word there. And this process is something the liberal arts have been around for quite some time. By their fruits ye shall know them. And so what has been the product of these liberal arts is the Renaissance and basically Enlightenment thinking in general. So it has value if you value freedom, if you value human enlightenment or people being brought out of ignorance and bringing themselves out of ignorance. That's the most important thing, is being your own shepherd, as it were. And so what I've done is, for people who don't know, to expand this process of the liberal arts into not just the TRIVIUM and the QUADRIVIUM, which was the 7 liberal arts, but to include a multitude of other liberal arts endeavors, okay? The first of which is the PENTIVIUM. This is an endeavor, in which case you have a process of self-development. Really, it's a continuous process. And it starts with a purification of yourself, generally speaking. People need to be purified, therapy, things like that. Purifying yourself from the known and really sort of just cleansing your mental palate. And then goes from there to learning new knowledge. Particularly in our time and in our culture, it's about learning about yourself and what that means in the very individualistic sense as well as the cosmic sense. What are you as a person? And there's no better source to learn about what you are at the cosmic level, in the cosmic sense, than the Hermetic principles. Because these are principles which are only now becoming confirmed by science that were developed thousands of years ago. And those are basically, mind is fundamental to the universe. Mind is the generator, if you will, the creator of all things. The second one is correspondence, that as above, so below. And so we have minds, we have miniaturized minds. Of course, that is a result of the 10th principle, which is self-similarity. And correspondence kind of go hand in hand a little bit, but they're two very distinct things. And then rhythm, vibration, these things are basic. Everything is constantly in a state of polarity, is another Hermetic principle. Gender, which goes hand in hand with polarity, but is very distinct. Cause and effect is another one. And so these Hermetic principles, of course, correspond to aspects of ourselves in a cosmic sense, which means that we are beholden to these Hermetic principles in their various ways, in various contexts. So cause and effect is basically what other people would think of as karma, right? So you reap what you sow. And so what we have created in our society and modern civilization is what we have sown. What we have sown is what we are now reaping. And what we need to do is, of course, to start living in accordance with nature and with reality, which we haven't been doing. We've been sort of fighting against nature as though nature is some kind of an enemy to be defeated. Similar to the whole idea of viruses and everything. Nature is some kind of terrorist that we have to fight and win against. Nature is some kind of terrorist that we have to, some terror that we have to fight. Terra, some kind of terror. Yeah, a war against the earth and nature, yes. And so, what do we have? We have an option of accumulating knowledge about these things. And then the third step in this process, the PENTIVIUM, is to apply that knowledge, to actually use it and act on it instead of just sort of hoarding knowledge and thinking that knowing things is good enough. And then once you've reached a state of balance and mastery of those three primary colors of life, really, of living as a philosopher, then you can reach a certain point where you're no longer someone else's pawn, or at the very least you're aware of the fact that you are someone else's pawn. And tends to be that when you become aware of your role as someone else's sort of surrogate, that you don't want to be that anymore. Isn't that funny? Once you become fully aware of the fact you're a tool, you don't want to be a tool anymore, at least for the most of us. Anyway, so once you've reached this point of self-mastery, of sovereignty through the PENTIVIUM, which can only be brought about by the PENTIVIUM, by the way. You can't reach a state of self-mastery without purifying yourself from whatever culture you're from, accumulating knowledge of self and applying that knowledge. It's just not, it just doesn't fit the cards there. So point being that you kind of have to go through this process in order to become awakened, as it were. Anything else is counterfeit. Now, the HEXIVIUM is the gateway to the UNIVIUM and BIVIUM, which are fundamental to the whole liberal arts process of the road to freedom. The road to freedom starts with the PENTIVIUM, and then people learning about the TRIVIUM and QUADRIVIUM through the PENTIVIUM, emancipating themselves, liberating themselves through the liberal arts, teaching this to others, teaching these arts to others through education, and through this process, ultimately emancipating the whole of humanity on a global scale, creating an environment, an aesthetic, which is conducive to the human betterment and the overall development of human mental capabilities, and then finally creating a lexicon of concepts which makes it easier for children and adults alike to understand the world in which they live. That is the goal, ultimately, of this process, and of course to emancipate humanity, making it possible for self-governance and a true sort of free society. Take it or not, that is what it is. The HEXIVIUM is the gateway to the creation of the UNIVIUM and BIVIUM, which are an aesthetic and a concept lexicon that come to be in the times in which we live. They tend to, like dictionaries and stuff like that, came into existence around the same kind of flourishing time and hardship as well. I mean, the plague and everything. They come when we realize how impermanent things are, how important it is for us to go forward instead of go back. So, in the spirit of that, I wish everyone thanks, and would hope that you give in this time instead of being sort of greedy. But let's see. Anyway, love and appreciation. Bye.